You're driving home from work after a long day. You see red and blue lights light up your mirror. Your heart rate jumps, you signal, you pull over clean and safe. The officer walks up to your window and says, "License and registration." You hand it over without even thinking. But here's the part most people don't realize. In the next 60 seconds, one wrong word can turn a basic traffic stop into a search, an arrest, or something a whole lot worse. Every single day across America, drivers make one critical mistake on traffic stops. They think handing over ID means they have to answer every question that comes next. They don't realize that once you hand over what the law requires, a totally separate second investigation often starts. And that's exactly where people lose constitutional protections without even noticing it happened. I've spent years breaking down traffic stop law, and I've watched hundreds of real body cam videos, the kind where you can literally see the moment the stop changes gears. I've also dug through court rulings that show how often an officer uses your ID as the starting point for a fishing expedition. And I've seen how one phrase can shut that down immediately. This is educational content only. For specific legal guidance, consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Today, I'm going to give you 5 exact responses you need to know for when cops demand your ID during a traffic stop. You'll learn what you must provide, what usually comes next, and the words that help keep a ticket from turning into a criminal investigation. Point 1. What you must give during a traffic stop. Let's start with the legal reality. If you're operating a motor vehicle and an officer pulls you over, you must provide 3 things: your driver's license, your vehicle registration, and proof of insurance. This is not optional. This is not negotiable. Every state in the country requires this. If you refuse, you can get arrested. Picture this. You get pulled over for a broken tail light. The officer walks up and says, "License, registration, and insurance, please." You must comply. You're driving on public roads, and the law requires you to have those documents and show them on demand. But here's where people make the first mistake. They think because they have to show their license, they also have to answer questions. Wrong. Providing required documents and answering investigative questions are 2 completely different things. You hand over your license, your registration, your insurance. The officer takes them back to the patrol car. He runs your information. He's checking for warrants, suspended licenses, outstanding tickets. That's normal. That's legal. You wait. Then the officer comes back. He hands you your documents, maybe a warning, maybe a ticket. At this point, most people think the stop is done. But watch what happens next. The officer leans down and says, "So where are you headed tonight?" That question has nothing to do with your broken taillight. That's the start of a fishing expedition. Officers are trained to extend traffic stops by asking casual, friendly-sounding questions. They know most people will answer because people think they have to keep cooperating. But here's the legal truth. Once the officer completes the purpose of the stop, writing the ticket or giving the warning, you are free to leave. Any questions beyond that are voluntary. The Supreme Court case Rodriguez versus United States makes this crystal clear. An officer cannot prolong a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the original violation. If they gave you your documents back, the stop is over. Questions about where you're going or what you're doing are not part of that original stop. So when the officer asks that first follow-up question, here's what you say. "Officer, am I free to leave?" Say it calmly, say it respectfully, but say it clearly. That one question forces the officer to state the legal status of the encounter. If the stop is over, they have to say yes. If they're detaining you for something else, they need reasonable suspicion of a separate crime. If they say yes, you're free to leave, then you say, "Thank you, officer," and you drive away. Don't keep talking. Don't explain where you're going. Just leave. If they say no, you are not free to leave, then you ask the next critical question. For what reason am I being detained? That forces them to articulate reasonable suspicion. They must give a specific lawful reason, not a hunch, not a feeling, a specific, articulable fact that suggests criminal activity. If they can't give you that, the continued detention is illegal. Wrong way. The officer hands back your documents. He asks, "Where are you headed?" You answer, "Just going home from my friend's place." Officer says, "Oh yeah? What were you doing there?" You answer, "Just hanging out." Officer says, You guys have anything to drink? Now you're being investigated for DUI. And it all started because you answered a simple question. Right way. The officer hands back your documents. He asks, "Where are you headed?" You respond, "Officer, am I free to leave?" Officer says, "I'm just asking a simple question." You repeat, "Am I free to leave?" If yes, you leave. If no, you ask, "For what reason am I being detained?" You must provide your license, registration, and insurance during a traffic stop. But once those documents are returned, you don't have to answer fishing questions. Ask if you're free to leave. Point 2. The 5 questions cops ask after getting your ID. After you hand over your ID, the officer runs it, then comes back with questions designed to build probable cause. Here are the 5 most common traps. Where are you coming from? Answer a bar and you're getting steered into a DUI investigation. Answer a friend's house and now he wants to know why you were there. Any answer opens more questions. Where are you headed? Same trap. A party suggests alcohol. Home leads to which home and why you're out late. Do you know why I pulled you over? This is designed to make you confess. If you say, "I think I was speeding," you just admitted to a violation he might not have even clocked. Have you had anything to drink? Say yes, even 1 beer, and you're being investigated for DUI. Say no, and if he smells anything, you look like a liar. Do you mind if I search your vehicle? This is the payoff. This comes after he's made you comfortable. He's asking because he does not have probable cause. You do not have to answer any of these. When asked, say, "Officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I won't be answering questions." "Officer, where are you coming from?" You say, "I'm invoking my right to remain silent." "Officer, you hiding something?" You say, "I don't answer questions without my attorney present." "Officer, that makes you look suspicious." You say, "I understand, officer." "Am I free to leave?" Don't fall for guilt tactics. Officers use "you hiding something" to pressure you. Stay firm. Every answer you give builds their case. Answer one question, then another, and pretty soon you're trapped trying to explain inconsistencies. If you're recording, announce, "For everyone's safety, I'm recording this interaction." That documents your refusal. Those 5 questions after ID are evidence gathering. Don't answer. Invoke your Fifth Amendment right. Then ask if you're free to leave. Point 3. Request versus order. This distinction matters. The officer has your license. He runs your information. Then he comes back and says, "Step out of the vehicle for a second." Most people immediately pop the door open, but that just gave the officer more control, and you may not have had to do it. There's a massive legal difference between a request and an order. Requests are voluntary. Orders are mandatory. But officers blur the line with soft language that sounds like a command but may be a request. Can you step out? That's a request. Step out of the vehicle. That's an order. Subtle difference. Legally huge. If you comply with a request, courts treat it as voluntary. If you comply with an order, you had no choice. When the officer makes any request, ask, "Officer, are you ordering me to step out or are you asking me?" That forces clarity. If he's asking, you can decline. "I'd prefer to stay in my vehicle, officer." If he's ordering you, you comply, but you protect yourself first. Before stepping out, say, "For the record, what is the lawful reason for ordering me out of the vehicle?" That makes the officer say the justification on camera. Officer safety is valid under Pennsylvania versus Mims, but "I just want to talk" is not. It creates a record that you are not stepping out voluntarily. As you step out, add, "I am complying under protest. I do not consent to any searches." That makes it clear you're only doing it because you were ordered. You are not waiving rights. On body cam, this protects you immensely. Wrong way. Officer says, "Step out." You immediately get out. Officer says, "Mind if I pat you down?" You say, "Okay." He finds a prescription bottle with someone else's name. Now you're arrested. And it all looked voluntary. Right way. Officer says, "Step out." You ask, "Are you ordering or asking?" Officer says, "I'm ordering you." You ask, "For the record, what is the lawful reason?" Officer says, "Officer safety." You respond, "I am complying under protest. I do not consent to searches." You step out slowly, hands visible. Always clarify whether it's a request or an order. If it's a request, you can decline. If it's an order, comply while documenting you're not doing it voluntarily. Point 4. Physical safety when handing over your ID. How you hand over your ID can keep the stop calm or turn it high stress. One sudden move and the officer's hand goes toward his gun. You're pulled over. The officer asks for your license. Your wallet is in your back pocket. If you reach back without saying anything, the officer may assume you're reaching for a weapon. Officers are trained to watch hands. If they can't see what you're doing, they assume the worst. A quick reach for a wallet can look like a draw stroke. Before you reach for anything, put your hands on the steering wheel. When asked for your license, say, "Officer, my wallet is in my back right pocket. I'm going to reach for it now with my right hand." Say it clearly. Then move slowly. Pull out your wallet and keep it visible. Don't fumble in your lap. Keep it where the officer can see it. If your registration is in the glove box, say, "Officer, my registration is in the glove compartment. I'm going to open it now." If you have a firearm in there, say, "Officer, I have a firearm in the glove compartment. My registration is also in there. How would you like me to proceed?" That announcement could save your life. If you pop open a glove box with a gun inside without warning, you might get drawn on. But if you tell him first, he can give you instructions. Narrate every movement. "I'm reaching for my insurance card. I'm placing my hands back on the wheel." This keeps the officer calm and creates a clean body cam record. Don't reach for your license before you're asked. Don't suddenly lean toward the passenger seat. Don't dig around in the console without announcing it. Don't reach under your seat. Movements without explanation look suspicious. Traffic stops are dangerous for officers. They don't know who's in the car. They don't know if there are weapons. Clear communication and slow movement reduce stress. Wrong way. Officer asks for license. You immediately reach back without speaking. Your hand disappears. Officer's tone changes. "Show me your hands." Now the stop is tense. Right way. Officer asks for license. Hands on the wheel. "My wallet is in my back pocket. I'm reaching for it with my right hand." You move slowly. The officer stays calm. Always announce movements before reaching for ID. Keep hands visible. Move slow and deliberate. Point 5. The warrant bluff during traffic stops. When you refuse to answer questions or refuse consent to search, officers will often say, "If you don't cooperate, I'll just go get a warrant." That sounds intimidating. For most drivers, it's pure bluff. A warrant requires a judge's signature and probable cause that a specific crime was committed. You don't get a warrant just because a driver stayed quiet. Here's the pattern. You provided your documents. The officer asked where you're coming from. You invoked your Fifth Amendment right. He asked to search. You said, "I do not consent." Now he's frustrated. "Fine, I'll go get a warrant." You're making this harder than it needs to be. Most people panic and fold. Okay, you can search. But if the officer actually had enough for a warrant, he wouldn't be asking for consent. He'd just search under the automobile exception. The automobile exception means if an officer has probable cause, he can search without a warrant. So when he asks for consent, he does not have probable cause. He's fishing. When threatened with a warrant, say, "Officer, if you believe you have legal grounds for a warrant, you're welcome to pursue that. But I do not consent to any searches. Am I free to leave?" That's not confrontational. You're just holding the line and putting the burden back on the officer. If he has probable cause, he'll use it. If not, he'll let you go. Officer says, "If you don't let me search, I'll get a warrant." You say, "If you believe you have legal grounds, pursue that. But I do not consent to any searches." Officer says, "You're being difficult. This could all be over." You say, "I understand, officer, but I'm exercising my Fourth Amendment rights. Am I free to leave?" Officer says, "Fine, you can go." That's how it usually ends. He realizes you know your rights, and you're not intimidated. He doesn't have enough for a warrant, so he lets you go. But if he says, "Wait here while I apply for a warrant," he's prolonging the stop beyond its original purpose. Rodriguez versus United States says he can't do that without reasonable suspicion of a separate crime. You've documented a potential violation. While waiting, remain silent. Don't answer more questions. Keep recording if possible. Document how long you're held. All of that becomes evidence if you need to challenge the stop later. The warrant threat is designed to scare you into consent, because consent makes everything legal. If you consent, the officer can tear your car apart, and later you can't argue it was illegal because you allowed it. But if you refuse consent and the officer searches anyway, your attorney has a stronger case. Either he had probable cause and he should articulate it, or he didn't, meaning the search was illegal and evidence gets thrown out. Don't fall for the warrant bluff. Officers can't get a warrant just because you exercise your rights. Call the bluff calmly, then ask if you're free to leave. Here's the core principle. During a traffic stop, you must provide your license, registration, and insurance documentation. But once you've done that, you control what happens next by knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Remember these 4 phrases. First, am I free to leave? Use this after your documents are returned, and the officer starts asking extra questions. Second, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Use this for any questions beyond the traffic stop. Third, I do not consent to searches. Say it clearly whenever asked. Fourth, officer, are you ordering me or asking me? Use this to clarify requests versus commands. Print these out. Keep them in your car. Practice them until they feel natural, because during a traffic stop, you won't have time to think. You need these phrases ready. Remember, this is educational content only, not legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney in your state for your specific situation. If this video helped you understand your rights during traffic stops, hit that like button. Subscribe for more breakdowns of traffic stop law. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. And share this with everyone you know who drives, because the smartest drivers aren't the ones who talk their way out of tickets. They're the ones who know exactly what to say to protect their rights while staying safe.